Our next speaker is an internal medicine physician and director of integrative functional medicine for Amen Clinic. He serves as an expert in the field and incorporates the latest developments in systems biology, genetics, and has deep understanding of human physiology to address complex medical and mental health issues. His approach is to find the root cause of a health problem, including metabolic, genetic, and environmental factors. He believes that such problems can be treated in a natural way by using targeted nutritional supplements, which would help in turn correcting hormonal and metabolic imbalances, improving lifestyle and diet, along with detecting and treating toxic exposure and infections. The title of his talk today, Mycotoxins, the Hidden Menace. Please welcome Dr. Mark Filidei.
Thank you.
My health was failing, and inside I knew I was dying.
I feel like I had lost so much. I lost my job, I lost my health, I lost my friends. So there wasn't really that much else to lose.
I got to a point where even in daily life, I thought, is this really worth doing? It's the hardest thing that you can do.
Most of the time I was lying in bed, in a fetal position, just trying to hang on.
It was very difficult to function because I was constantly fatigued, I was constantly nauseous, and I had this crazy brain fog.
And I looked at him and I said, okay, well, where's the pill to fix me? He's like, no, you don't understand, there's no pill to fix you.
And there were many times where I would find myself on the floor and having no idea how I got there or how long I had been there.
This is not just something's wrong or something's really wrong. I'm sick, I have to figure out what the problem is.
But I understand how people can take their life. Because you can hit a point where your coping ability is, you just wonder, am I insane? Is this ever going to end?
So if you think about it, we're looking at 45 million people in the U.S. at a given time being in a moldy building.
Anybody can have problems from a moldy building, a water-damaged building. Anybody can have symptoms.
My advice to someone who walks into a building and they start to feel that way is to just turn around and run like hell, because it's poisonous.
The vigilance is just exhausting. It really is. But that is our reality.
So for those of you who don't know, Dave Asprey, he built an empire basically on mold and mold-free coffee and things like that, which we'll talk about here in a minute too. So I have the kind of unique opportunity to see people's brains when I'm treating them. This is at the Amen Clinic, that's our gig. We do brain scans on everyone. So this is a SPECT scan, and anybody could see which brain they would like here. So the cool thing about this is it's visual. Now we do get official readings as a radiologist would report, but this is showing. See, you got a pointer there? Which one's the pointer? That one. Okay. So this is underneath side of the brain, left side, right side, top down. This doesn't look good. This doesn't look good. So now this is not anatomical. This is functional. So this is a blood flow study. So this is how the brain is working. So for me, and we see thousands of patients. We have 9 clinics, I think now. So if you come in for whatever problem you have, XYZ, depression, OCD, whatever, and your brain looks healthy, that's one thing. If your brain looks like this, you have a brain problem, right? So that's where I come in. I work up the toxic brains. And mold is always on the list, and Lyme, and metals, and everything we've been talking about. So the question is, why does your brain look like that? That's how I got into mold biz, was figuring this out. So again, this is another image. Again, pretty plain to see that you don't want a brain that looks like that. They can get better. That's the whole point. This is a blood flow study. You can improve this if you get rid of the mold and the mercury and the lime. So we also see brains that look like this. Again, it looks more like it should look smooth like a marble. If it looks like this, again, it's toxicity. What can do that? Long list of things. So anemias, sleep apnea can contribute to this, although it wouldn't look like that. So this is a toxic brain. And then the question is, what's doing that? There's a long list. That's why I ask my patients all these weird questions, like, have you ever had a water leak in your house? No doctor's ever asked me that. Did you ever have a tick bite? So I go through my long list of trying to pull out what happened. I like to call this invasion of the brain snatchers. So something can literally take your brain over, like mold, right? You're having your OCD because of pandas. Or you have dementia because you have Lyme disease. So these are literally stealing your brain function from you. So the toxic encephalopathy workup is looking for all these things. That's like what Dale Bredesen's doing with the Alzheimer's workup. It's really the same thing. It's functional medicine. So obviously on this one, we're going to focus on the biotoxin illness. So mycotoxicosis, target organs include the brain and pretty much every organ in your body. Severity, as we know, depends on lots of factors. Your genetic susceptibility, your comorbid infections, your toxin levels, age, your nutritional status. We heard a great talk last night about how the nutrition, getting back to overall health of the terrain, is ultra important. So I tell my patients that. I don't say terrain because they get a little confused, but I say your body has to win this battle, which is the terrain, your gut, your hormones, all that. Then we have glyphosate. I personally think glyphosate is a big reason why we're seeing a rise in autism over the years, because we all have it. If you ever do the glyphosate tests, you have glyphosate. We all do. If you eat organic or not, doesn't matter. You have it in your body. And it turns out glyphosate also dramatically increases the absorption of aluminum, which our bodies go to great length not to absorb. Glyphosate increases that absorption. And of course, what's in vaccines? Aluminum. A lot of them. So the aluminum adjuvants, I think, are the biggest deal. Again, we could have a whole talk on that. But I think the mercury, the part of the vaccine issue, was a bit of a red herring. Aluminum isn't. So here's mycotoxins. We drink them, too, on occasion. So the two primary sources of mold exposure, water-damaged buildings, which we all know about, but food, too. And again, we have two primary reactions to mold. You can have mold exposure that's non-toxic and just have allergies, sinus problems, etc. And, of course, there's the toxic part that we're all concerned more about. Not all species are toxigenic. Many are. I've listed them here. We've kind of gone over those over the weekend. So I won't belay the ones that we've already gone over. So common reactions, these are generalized reactions to mold, toxic or not, general allergy symptoms. But then you have the CNS reaction. So this is more the toxic mold stuff, which is what I see. So it can cause almost anything like Lyme. It can be the great imitator. Almost any kind of symptom. What I see most commonly is brain fog. So that's a big one. Memory, tension, brain fog, can't focus. I've even seen a lot of people with like deep realization or deep personalization, like it doesn't even feel like it's me, or I'm like in a video game. Sleep disorders, fatigue, irritability, and dementia, and or memory loss, anxiety, depression. Again, SCI, subjective cognitive impairment, a real big one. That's the brain fog. Just can't think straight. Not myself. I used to be sharp. Insomnia. So I see three kind of major biological causes of insomnia. there's many, but the top guns I think are mercury, mold, and candida. And then the derealization, which is kind of scary. So again, this is preaching to the choir here, but we have ochratoxin. It's in almost all people. Well, it isn't everyone. Actually, there's several studies showing ochratoxin can be detected in everybody. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means we all have some. The levels matter. Your biology matters. It's all over. There's studies in Europe showing they found it in everybody, literally, when they use highly sensitive testing. Aflatoxin, very toxic. Aspergillus is ubiquitous, as we know. Trichothecenes, these are considered the worst ones, the most toxic, the most biologically damaging. And the VOCs. So again, this audience is aware of this stuff. It's not just the mold spores, it's the VOCs that they put out into the environment. So here's actually some studies showing the VOCs elaborated from these 5 fungal species. So we know that they're putting out airborne toxins besides mycotoxins. And like some of our high-end mold testers are aware of this and check that. And this is a big one too. It can make underlying problems worse. So same thing with Lyme. I see a lot of Lyme patients, and I've trained with the Lyme gurus, and a lot of them don't get this part. And I think that's why they're treating Lyme patients for years with this antibiotic and that one. Let's rotate 3 more this month. It's just this months and years worth, and they're not getting better. I'm like, you're missing something. And a lot of times it's mold. So I think a lot of chronic Lyme patients are actually chronic mold patients. So, and or metals. So I always tell my Lyme patients, if you have Lyme, and that's if, and if it's doing anything to you, which is another story, you have to clear the runway to get better. So if you have mold in the way and metals in the way, you're just not going to get better. That's why they're on antibiotics, IV for years at home, and they're not getting better. And this is a big part of it. So why do we use binders? It's because the mycotoxins are recirculated through the gut. So if you believe in the genetic thing, the HLA thing, or not, it's still these are recirculated in the gut and picked up again. So your body gets rid of them, they're in the gut, they get reabsorbed. So you want to catch them in that area, right? So if you catch them in the lumen, they won't get reabsorbed. That's the whole idea with binders. The clays aren't actually getting into your bloodstream, although some people think they might, but this is all happening in your gut. Yeah, so why do we care? Well, because these affect pretty much every system you have in the body. The different toxins have different targets. Zearalenone, which I'm going to talk about, is a big endocrine disruptor. One of the labs checks that. I'm going to talk about lab testing in a bit, but I would like to see a lot more of these covered, which we'll talk about too. So again, different mycotoxins affect different systems. And as I'll show you later, the animal industry knows this down pat. They know every toxin, what organ system it affects, how do you treat it, what are safe levels. They have it, we don't. I'd love for us to have that. So T2, this has gone over this weekend, so I won't belabor it, but these are known to be really dangerous to the body. How do they do that? They induce neuronal apoptosis, so it's killing your nerve cells. Neuronal degeneration in the cerebral cortex, concurrent with disruption of ceramide synthesis. Ochratoxin A depletes striatal dopamine and its metabolites. So neuronal cell apoptosis in the substantia nigra. So what does that mean? Substantia nigra, dopamine, Parkinson's, right? So it's a direct neurotoxin and it's killing your brain cells. There's also a direct effect on neurotransmitters. So this is why people can go crazy or feel weird or be dereal, because there's a direct effect on neurotransmitters. A lot of these are for T2 toxin, which I would love for us to have a test for. St. Anthony's fire. So this is an old, well-known mold toxin problem. Interestingly, and I do a lot of the mold talks in the mental health, for mental health folks, doctors anyway, and you can see, one of the main symptoms of this St. Anthony's fire is mania and psychosis. So this is what thought might be possible explanation for bewitchment. So back then, if you were a witch, you got burned or drowned or something, and it could have been because you were eating contaminated rye. This killed thousands of people in the Middle Ages. Poorly stored grain, which is still a problem. You can actually see the ergot or ergo on the rye. So this was also already mentioned. Dr. Bredesen, who did a great job of, Dr. Bredesen, if you don't know him, he's a UCLA dementia Alzheimer's researcher who figured out after 25 years in the lab, you can reverse Alzheimer's in early stages. How do you do that? It's all functional medicine. I attended his very first training seminar, and he was asking people, okay, how many of you check for mercury? I raised my hand. How many of you check for Lyme? Raise your hand. How many of you do hormones? Right? I was the only one, because it's 100% functional. So there was actually hospital, major hospital people there that were trying to incorporate his memory program into their hospital. No way is that going to work. It's just not possible. They don't know this stuff. Now this was also really interesting and a little scary. So this is showing that they actually found fungal DNA in the brain of Alzheimer's patients and not in controls. So this is compelling evidence of the existence of fungal infection in the CNS from Alzheimer's patients, but not in control individuals. So that could really kick it up a notch with concern about mold and any kind of brain-related issue. Now, not a lot of antifungals get into the brain. Voriconazole does, one of the only ones. So DON, deoxynivalenol, is one of the most common and most concerning mycotoxins in the animal biz. So this is we're talking about glia, right, yesterday? Decreased viability of the glia with DON. DON caused a biphasic effect on the neuroinflammatory response of microglia to LPS, lipopolysaccharide, super inflammatory. So if you have some kind of LPS inflammation from your gut or whatever else, and you have this mycotoxin in your system, that's not good. So DON could, at low doses, cause modifications in brain homeostasis and possibly be involved in the etiology of neurological diseases. DON is the most common contaminant in grains, as we'll see later. So not a whole lot of studies in people, which we've known. This one is one in kids, showing that 6-year-old kids, this was, I think, in Poland. Yeah. The results of this study draw attention to the harmful effect of early postnatal exposure to indoor molds on children. This is something you could maybe use in one of these court cases. Yeah, look, it does affect kids. It could affect adults too. It affects their cognitive development. And this is a kind of a graph just showing, see if we can point that out here for folks. Oops, go back and pointer. So this would be a standard curve for IQ. And this is just showing that the longer the exposure to mold, the lower the IQ average of the kids. So one of the few studies, but it is one anyway, in humans. Patulin, this is what you get from apples. Alters barrier function of the intestinal epithelium. So we now know that mycotoxins cause leaky gut syndrome, which is, of course, intestinal barrier health. And the protective effects of glutathione, which we all know is superstar. Ochratoxin A alters intestinal barrier absorption. So OTA, another leaky gut causer. Now, some of us think that aspergillus, well, we know it's in the respiratory tract. Some people think it may be in the gut. I would love to have a gut test for aspergillus. That could be the direct cause of leaky gut syndrome, or one of the contributing factors. So again, this is DAWN, deoxynivalenol. Altered neuroendocrine signaling, again, and altered gut integrity. Here's another one that affects your gut. And the blood-brain barrier. So T2 toxin, one of the worst. It's in food. T2 induces alteration in the blood-brain barrier permeability. And look, MMP9 is also noted in there. One of the tests, the Shoemaker tests. So we know it causes leaky gut, and if you have leaky gut, you have leaky brain anyway. And now this is saying that causes leaky brain directly too. And it also may affect the microbiome directly. So long-term exposure to mycotoxins may also produce changes in the microbiota, which we know is important too. So in conclusion, mucus and microbiota are key targets for dietary mycotoxins. Note, dietary. Endocrine disrupting effects of zearalenone. So zearalenone is a very estrogenic mycotoxin. Personally, I think this might be one reason why we have fertility issues in some women. This is an estrogen mimic. And some of the metabolites, there's also a metabolite of ochratoxin we might want to be checking for. It's the most toxic version. It's not just ochratoxin A, it's ochratoxin A metabolites that can be bad. And that's the number one metabolite in humans is a quinone derivative of ochratoxin A. Another estrogen receptor, alpha, crucial in zearalenone-induced invasion in prostate cancer cells. So ZEA is able to modulate the production of progesterone, estradiol, and testosterone, and cortisol, as well as hormone production and fertility, and cause premature birth in domestic animals. As we'll see a little later, the animal biz knows all about this stuff. Which hormones, what problems, how do you treat it? It's amazing. Hope that video runs too. So the toxic and immunosuppressive effects of mycotoxins. Again, you can just go through this at your leisure, but it shows which species is affected. Humans are on most of these. What the effects are, and the effects on the immune system, which they all have. Again, this is from the animal biz. So what mycotoxin productivity loss, right? So if you ain't making more pigs, you're losing money. If your chickens aren't laying eggs, you're losing money, which is why they know about all this. So which ones cause more productivity loss? Which ones are more immunotoxic? So you see zearalenone isn't super problematic as toxicity. But what does it affect? The reproductive tract, mainly in females. So your house doesn't have to be this moldy to have a problem. Again, as we know, you're more likely to see it like this, right? It's behind the wallpaper. We have some experts here that are well aware of this kind of stuff. And it's like this, right? The wall just falls down. Oh, there's the mold. Who knew? Crawl spaces. This is an interesting case. So I had a patient come to me, not for mold, but she came in complaining of getting sick all the time. 4 respiratory infections in the past year, brain fog. She actually had a knee surgery that wasn't healing, so a non-union. 3 recent bacterial infections. She had an SI infection, sacroiliac joint. Culture negative, UTI with Pseudomonas, lots of IV antibiotics, wakes up in pain. So she wasn't healing, right? She was immunosuppressed. So what am I thinking? Well, what can cause immunosuppression? Of course, mycotoxins. And she had this brain fog. So her chief complaint was, why do I keep getting all these infections, and what about the brain fog? So again, I ask everyone, have you been exposed? Any place you worked or lived have a water leak, a roof leak, plumbing leak, wet basement. You're amazed how many people say, oh yeah, our basement floods every year. I never thought about that. And so she says, oh yeah, whenever I take a shower, water seeps out at the bottom of the stairs. And the floors are squishy. I said, you might have a problem. So she had positive mycotoxin testing. Again, you didn't need to know that she had a problem with water intrusion. And here's where the problem is. Now, you can't see much here. For us, we would probably see something close. But right here, there's a little discoloration. Nothing major that most homeowners wouldn't really think about. A little hole right there. So she did a home mold test. It was positive. I knew she was sick from this. So you take down the wall, and oops, all kinds of black stuff there. Close up, a lot more black stuff. Now, what was that black stuff? There's another close up. Off scale, Catonium, Stachy, and Aspergillus. Kind of bad, right? I don't think I've seen one that high, so greater than 1.2 million count of the worst of the worst. And the funny thing just on that story, wasn't funny, but anyway, it was a rental house, so she calls the landlord, she sends some guy over, doesn't speak English, he's just going to patch up the wall. Wipe it down and patch up the wall. I'm like, no, it's not going to work. So this is a family I saw, a beautiful house, fairly new. It's actually here in Dallas. They were all sick. They all had various issues. Some just psychologic. Kid had behavior problems. Mom had to deal with a husband and a son who weren't doing so well. Not overtly toxic people. These are pretty healthy. The guy was an ex-Green Beret, or no, he was a SEAL. Actually, SEAL Team 6 guy. Big, strong dude, total alpha male. The kid was having behavior problems, but the husband was still having brain fog problems, kind of ADD. So I wasn't thinking mold initially, but we got to that point, and their house tested positive on several tests here. So Aspergillus, again, off scale high there. You can see that. Hyphal fragments off scale, Catonium off scale. This is the kid's bedroom. No one would think anything, right? It's a nice house, no problems. This is the corner of the bedroom. This is behind the wall, so that white stuff is not supposed to be there. It's a borescope picture. And you start taking down the wall, and now you're seeing black stuff. So we've got it here, it's down here. This is under the floor. So they pulled up the flooring. This is mold. The windowsill, the inspector just put his finger through it. It was that rotted. So that's going right outside. When you pull down the baseboards around this kid's room, this is what you see. Black all around. This is the beautiful office of the husband, nice beautiful wood paneling. Again, you wouldn't think anything about this until you take it off, and now you got black stuff down there, black stuff all around the corners, black stuff on the floor. This is the wall, the corner behind all the paneling. So this is what the whole problem was. There was a drain pipe. It was a brick house. Drain pipe going down through the brick wall was leaking the whole time. Every time it rained, it would just pour water all throughout the house. that was literally just rotted through. They didn't take that apart. That's rotted through. This was, again, behind the paneling. This is the bathroom, the corner of the bathroom. That was right behind the guy's office space, kind of a close-up, all the muck in there. This was behind the toilet. So the whole house was just a mold bomb, right? And you would not think about that. That's what it looked like before, right? Nice and pretty. So we all know about that part. Shift a little bit to about food. Now, just as not a disclaimer, but to set the stage, yes, there's mold in food. Do I think it's as bad as houses? Not at all. However, and I think the big however is these, as we heard yesterday, these can be synergistic. So if you have DON, deoxynivalenol, in your food and aflatoxin from your cereal and whatever, this can have an additive effect. And I think a lot of what we're seeing, personally, on these tests, whatever lab it is from food, especially aflatoxin. Now, it could be a degree. Maybe if it's 15 or dramatically elevated, it might be more likely from a house. But as you'll see here, it's in food too. So my point there is it might confuse your testing. When I first started doing testing with real-time years ago, I automatically assumed it was from their building, their house or their office. And we set out in these wild goose chases and never found anything. Maybe I was just chasing their diet. That was my concern. It still is my concern. So it is known to be a global health threat because of stored grain problems. So they know mycotoxins are secondary metabolites that show problems with human beings, wildlife, etc. We know that. Now this tends to be more, when you hear about mold toxicity, it's usually in clusters of people that had stored grain somewhere locally and got sick. That's the severe case, but I think you probably have lower levels of that chronically. So urine analysis reveals high DON levels in pregnant women in Croatia. So again, this is just one local study. These weren't sick people. These were just normal pregnant women. So, and also note, co-exposure of DON and ochratoxin A was confirmed in 10% of the samples. That's where you're starting to get that synergistic effect of like double toxicity. So half of them, now they do have standards apparently, this PMTDI, so derived estimation of DON exposure revealed 50% of the participants exceeded some safety level. Ochratoxin A in infants and adults. So considerable increases in OTA levels were found in these samples. These are the conjugates that I was talking about. So in conclusion, enzymatic hydrolysis of urine samples is highly advisable in order to avoid underestimation of ochratoxin exposure. So we might be underestimating some OTA exposures. Again, another human study, so I think more of these the better. The results revealed exposure to mycotoxins is common, and concurrent exposure to more than one toxin was found in 70% of the study population. What did they check for? Fumonisin, DON, actually DON wasn't in there, one, zearalenone, ochratoxin, alpha-ZOL, which is a metabolite, and several of these are food-based. Ochratoxin A, that's why I say here's 100%. In the German cohort, those 50 people, analytes were detected in 100%. And they show some ranges. So those are the ranges you could expect to see in people. So it's found in pretty much everybody. Age, gender, sex didn't change the findings. So we got moldy food. This is considered not toxic, although some of us might disagree. But these aren't poisonous molds in any case. So these are pistachios. There's some mold on them. We all know about moldy bread, salami. I wouldn't eat this one. So actually, when I saw this, and started researching it, there's a blog for everything, right? Well, there's a salami blog, of course. People that make their own salami. And they're like, do you eat the green stuff? No, I cut it off the green stuff. So I wouldn't eat it. Yeah, salami maker blog. Roquefort cheese, that's full of mold. Again, this is not poisonous, but could it be problematic? Maybe. The standard stuff you see in food is not toxic. I wouldn't want to work here. Mold dangling over your head all day long. Coffee. So Dave Asprey made lots of money on moldy coffee. What I did is I sent a famous brand of coffee off for testing at Romer Labs, just for kicks. 0. So parts per billion, nothing. They're checking aflatoxin, fumonisin. You can get food tested if you want. It costs $300 or so. And you can get a sample, small sample or the whole thing. This is the whole panel. So this is Romer Labs. They do a lot of food testing. I was kind of surprised. I was expecting it to be toxic, especially Starbucks. But I'm sure if you send some samples in, it'd be problematic. But at least we can feel a little bit better about drinking what's back there. So this is grain contamination around the world. So there's a company called Biomin that does a world mycotoxin study every year, and they check toxins in grains. And it's color-coded, so red is not good. The darker the red, look who's there, us. So what this is saying, let's see if we can go back there. Does backwards work? Yeah. So, and this varies every year, but it's similar. So this is saying that 75% of the grains tested had DON in them. Small percent had T2, zearalenone. Fumonisins and DON are the highest contaminants. This is also showing, and we're in kind of the red zone, and it shows these little animal markers here. So this is showing which animals it affects how badly, because they know that. They know that this one affects chickens more than pigs or whatever, right? So they even list the toxin, how much, and what animals it affects. And it shows which commodities they're in. So multiple mycotoxin occurrence. Which ones are the worst? Wheat, corn, barley. And also shows that 32 toxins on average per sample. 97% of them had fumonisin toxins. 97% had 10 or more mycotoxins. This is showing what the toxins were, what their metabolites are. So where do they get contaminated? Why do we get moldy food? Because it's either in the field, so it gets wet, soggy, whatever, it gets moldy outside, or in storage. And these are the ones you tend to see. So the trichothecenes seem to be prior to harvest. Fumonisins, this is a bad one too. So aflatoxin, ochratoxin is in storage. And then ergot, more in grasses. We don't see that so much in commercial grains, except rye. So Europe does something called the Rapid Alert System for Food and Feed. Because of the EU and the cross-border stuff, they have food standards that they want to see before it goes from Belgium to Italy or wherever it's going. And they reject stuff for various reasons. So that ain't coming in if it has metals or whatever. And look at mycotoxins here. One of the highest, in fact, it's the second highest reason that they reject food from another country because of mold toxins. So mycotoxins in food, this is the same part of the report, mostly related to aflatoxins in the food. So what's that? Again, OTA on our tests. Significant increase in notifications from peanuts from China, hazelnuts from Turkey. So if you're in there at Trader Joe's getting your bag of nuts, you might want to look at where it's coming from. Turkey turns out to be pretty bad for some of these mycotoxins. Again, this is the same kind of thing, hazard, notifications by hazard category, mycotoxins, by far the highest. Serious, so it says serious or not serious, it's under the serious category. And, less people, oh, we're here in the United States, everything's clean and fresh here, we have the best USDA, blah, blah, blah. Not going to be here. So Turkey had, this is the country of origin of the thing that was rejected. So Turkey had 283 rejections. We had 89, which is second, and then Vietnam. So the EU kicked out 89 of our products because they were too moldy. We do have FDA looking at this stuff. This is domestic mycotoxins in domestic and imported foods. They look for these toxins: aflatoxin, patchoulin, DON, fumonisin, OTA. So aflatoxin, known carcinogen, and it says are known carcinogens to susceptible laboratory animals and presumably to humans. I would say yes. So therefore, the presence of aflatoxin in food should be restricted to the lowest practical level. And historically, aflatoxin levels in peanuts and corn have been highest in the southeastern states. Hot and humid down there, right? Corn from anywhere in the U.S. may be affected. Patchoulin, this is in apples. And I think the interesting part here is, so pasteurization of the apple juice doesn't get rid of it. It's still there. Both pasteurized and non-pasteurized apple juice are to be were collected. This is the instructions for the people doing the testing. Apple juice could pose a health risk if the juice is consumed over an extended period of time. So if you got your kid sucking on that little juice box, throw it away. So DON, this is also called vomitoxin because it causes a lot of GI problems. So if you got a patient with a lot of GI problems and nausea, it could be from their food, from this particular toxin. It's a common contaminant in several grains, including wheat, corn, barley, rye, associated with a number of adverse effects in humans and animals, which I would love to get a DON test. So this is showing, again, the occurrence of the mycotoxins in grains. DON is the highest. Ochratoxin A contaminates cereals. Been found in edible animal tissues, as well as human blood, sera, and milk. So if a cow eats moldy grain and you eat the cow, you got the toxins too. Fumonisins, this is a real big one in the animal biz. The presence of fumonisins in human food, including cornmeal and breakfast cereals, associated with esophageal cancer, common contaminant of corn. So cornmeal, breakfast cereals. Now, interestingly, too, it looks like how it's processed makes a difference. So in descending order of where you find the toxins, bran, which you'd figure, that's the outside, right? That's probably going to be the most contaminated. Bran flour, then meal, then grits. So kind of in that order is where they're more toxic to less toxic. So this is showing that fumonisins can cause something called leukoencephalomalacia, which turns horses' brains into mush, literally. It's like Creutzfeldt-Jakob in people. So equine encephalopathy from a mold toxin. So this affects the white matter. Now this piqued my interest when I saw this. So we see white matter lesions a lot when you do MRIs, you know, and no one knows what they are. Oh, it could be early MS, or it could be Lyme, or maybe it's mold. So these mold toxins can cause white matter changes. And then we also saw that there is fungal DNA in brains. Another maybe connection there. So moldy corn. Aspergillus fumigatus, so this is a gliotoxin, right? The most common cause of mold disease in humans. So that's why you want your gliotoxin test. And the presence of bacterial-derived LPS increased the concentration of gliotoxin in the growth media. So LPS is kind of a bad player. You know, it's a real inflammatory marker. Lipopolysaccharide seems to worsen this combo. Increased virulence of Aspergillus fumigatus during bacterial co-infection, i.e. Lyme. So if you have Lyme and mold, maybe you're really inflaming your brain. Maybe you are. So this one hook runs because this is pretty cool. So when I started doing the research for these talks, you started looking up what are sources of mold, et cetera, and I came across this stuff with the animal industry, and I just did a deep dive because it's amazing how much they know about this problem, and we don't.
Most types of grains are infested by molds that produce mycotoxins, which are hazardous to animals and humans. Mycotoxins cost the global livestock and aquaculture industries billions each year. Monitoring and mitigation have therefore become indispensable. Since 2004, the annual Biomin Mycotoxin Survey analyzes thousands of agricultural commodity samples from across the world. Latest results show that over 80% contain one mycotoxin or more. Mycotoxins impair animal productivity and health status, affecting various organs and in extreme cases resulting in mortality. These toxins vary in terms of effects and chemical structures and require different approaches. The 30-plus year commitment of Biomin to mycotoxin research has produced cutting-edge ways to counteract a broad range of mycotoxins, complemented by advanced detection tools such as Spectrum 380 to measure more than 380 mycotoxins in one go. These toxins vary in terms of effects and chemical structures and require different strategies to combat them. Mycofix is an innovative, all-in-one feed additive using 3 different strategies to deliver absolute protection. It contains 3 components authorized by the EU for proven safety and effectiveness. 1. Adsorption. Clay minerals selectively bind adsorbable mycotoxins such as aflatoxins. Mycofix offers the highest and most specific aflatoxin adsorption with over 95% effectiveness. 2. Biotransformation. The most scientifically advanced way to combat mycotoxins uses a unique combination of patented specific enzymes and biological components to convert mycotoxins into non-toxic, environmentally safe metabolites. This process is irreversible. Fumzyme, a unique purified enzyme, cleaves the 2 side chains from fumanisins, resulting in non-toxic metabolites. Feeding trials have demonstrated the effectiveness of Fumzyme as measured by the SA-SO ratio, a key biomarker. Biomin BBSH cleaves the toxic epoxy group from trichothecenes, transforming them into harmless metabolites. Biomin BBSH has been proven to significantly reduce DON concentration in serum. Due to its structural similarity to estrogen, zearalenone latches onto the estrogen receptor, causing hyperestrogenism. Biomin MTV, a patented yeast strain, breaks zearalenone's lactone ring. In vitro trials confirmed the degradation into a non-estrogenic metabolite. Similarly, Biomin MTV degrades ochratoxin A, rendering it non-toxic. 3. Bioprotection. The Biomin Bioprotection Mix, a scientifically proven blend of carefully selected plant and algae extracts, prevents damage caused by mycotoxins. While mycotoxins inhibit immune cell growth, weakening animals' defenses, the bioprotection mix restores immune cell proliferation, ensuring proper liver and immune system function. Finally, The adsorption and bioprotection strategies combine to provide endotoxin protection of over 93%. Mycofix unites these three strategies to combat mycotoxins using patented proprietary technology, making it the most advanced mycotoxin protection available.
So you get the point there that they know not only do they know which toxins do what, they have enzymes that detoxify these things. Oh, you can just get rid of trichothecenes, just take this enzyme. It's non-toxic. Wow, I would like that. And look at these graphs, right? So here's a cow, and these are all the mycotoxins and what part they affect. They even point to it. So, right, this does this does that. So T2 toxin affects gastroenteritis, intestinal hemorrhages, so that's big with GI stuff. Zearalenone, irregular heats, i.e. menstrual irregularity. Low conception rates, infertility. Ovarian cysts, anyone? Abortions, embryonic loss. So if you have maybe a patient that keeps having miscarriages, maybe it's this. Low sperm production, low sperm count. That's just one of them. So lameness, musculoskeletal issues, decreased feed intake, convulsions, i.e. seizures, things like that, all from, again, they know what toxin does what in what system. And they have it for pigs, and they have it for chickens. I'd like one for humans. Put one of us up there. And they also have standards. So how much has no clinical effect? So aspergillus, less than 100 parts per billion, no clinical effect. Toxic levels. Fusarium, ergot, anyway, I'm not sure which one that is. So again, they have actually standards of where is good, where is bad for animals. And they have treatments too. So they have mold nil, right? So you add this to the food and they don't absorb the mold. Toxinil, so they have eliminating molds, organ protection, and binding mycotoxins. They even have something called Ultrabond, which is super duper binder compared to, so you have zeolite here and bentonite clay here. So this is super bentonite. Again, maximum tolerance limits for animals. And this is just showing the effect of the mycotoxins on the gut. I won't belabor that. So this one as well. How much time do we have? I got lots of slides. Oh, yikes. Okay. So this is one of the products that they have, which is all natural, which is interesting. So this is one of the products they were talking about. What's in it? I wondered. So garlic, oregano, horseradish, chili pepper, peppermint, cinnamon. This is the additive that they put in to detoxify. Now, they do have some patented enzymes, like that Fumzyme stuff, that we can't get a hold of. I tried. Even this stuff for the animals isn't allowed in the U.S. Surprise, surprise. So this was something interesting, actually showing when you treat the animals with that particular product, you actually increase the villus height in the gut. So you're increasing GI surface area that was damaged by the mold toxin. So 15% higher, 14% deeper. This digesterom stuff that they use outside that little pill I just showed you. So this is a human biomonitoring of multiple mycotoxins in Belgian population. So the main one found in humans was deoxynivalenol, i.e. DON. For the first time, this was found in children's urine. Risk assessment is based on urinary levels indicates potential concern for a number of individuals like children and older folks. Right. So testing and treatment, probably could speed through some of this. You all know about the Shoemaker protocol. When I took Richie's course a long time ago, it sounded great, and then it didn't map out onto reality so much. There's always been sort of the Brewer protocol and the Shoemaker protocol, and I kind of blended them, and I'm totally in sync with what Neil's doing, Neil and Nathan. You know, it's what works that you got to do. You know, what makes sense? Does the testing map onto reality? In my experience, it didn't. And I'll show you one reason why too. These are the respective papers by Dr. Brewer and Dr. Shoemaker, so we don't have to belabor that. We know what SIRS is, the biotoxin pathway. Let's see, I want to get to. So sometimes these symptoms can help, but it turns out since the labs are not very helpful, really, these symptom clusters can be helpful, and I think most people that have followed that Shoemaker protocol are using this more. If you check those boxes, if you check 8 boxes, I think it's indicative of mold exposure, but you could have a lot of this, of course, from other things as well. But this is just pointing out the CNS, the mental health issues, so memory impairment, can't learn new stuff, can't concentrate, confused, mood swings, disorientation, the SIRS pyramid. Again, we'll kind of skip through this. So one big problem I have with these markers, and I still get people that say, oh, my TGF was high, so I have mold. Like, no. So MMP9 is an enzyme, but it's involved in a lot of stuff, right? It can be high with cancer or diabetes or Alzheimer's or MS or PTSD. PTSD. We see a lot of PTSD people. So these are the studies showing that. So MMP9 can be raised in many different conditions. TGF beta, stress. Okay, who's not stressed? Smoking, yeast. So if you have candida, viruses can all raise TGF. So again, not specific at all. You could have every single thing fit the protocol numbers, and it's not mold. It could be Lyme or who knows what else. So these are the papers showing TGF elevations in a bunch of other stuff. Dr. Brewer's paper. So I do some DNA testing of the nasal mucosa. So cultures aren't great, but because stuff doesn't grow always. I don't do Marcon's testing anymore. I didn't find it was easy to get rid of, number one. Probably we need to do much more serious irrigation than just sprays up the nose. But I like this test. This is a DNA test. And actually, it doesn't hide from the probe. So it doesn't have to grow. If it's there, it'll show up. So this was, I think, a kid that I saw who had all kinds of fungi in his nose, including Alternaria, Cladosporium. Some of these things, these are, when you first start doing these, this is kind of too much information stuff. Like you see bacteria you've never heard of, an ID has never heard of. It's like, what is this? I don't know. But you kind of get a picture of what's normal. These turn out to be fairly normal, but also shows you, there's some real bad guys in there. It'll show up here. Tells you if there's a resistance or not. This test looked really great when I first did it. It's a whole genome sequencing. It's not just 16S sequencing. It doesn't look for a couple hundred base pairs. It's the whole genome. So one person's data is a terabyte. We look for 30,000 different organisms in one sample. And it's a huge number crunching problem. So they figured out the software to do that. I didn't find it very clinically useful, though. I did about 60 of them or so. It's about $800, not covered by insurance, of course, but it turned out there was a lot of commonalities, like everybody has certain things. This is in the blood, so you're not supposed to have fungi in your blood, but Dr. Fry is finding this. These people find it a lot, fungi in the blood. Now this person actually had 3 different Aspergillus species in the blood. This is the only one I found, though, that had Aspergillus. What this lab particularly finds all the time is Malassezia. So Malassezia is a common skin fungus, but it's in like everybody's blood. What does that mean? I don't know. They also found zillions of this, Propionibacterium, another skin bacteria. Everybody has it in their blood. What does that mean? I don't know. It also tells you if it's toxic or not. Most of them, they say unknown. I don't know. So I didn't find it clinically useful. I think this kind of test, when optimized, will be great. I think Dr. Fry is doing a good job of this. So again, more papers we know about. Basics of treatment. Again, we know about this a lot as well. Get out of the environment, of course. Usually we're detoxing with some kind of a binder, whether it's Welchol, cholestyramine, clays. I don't do cholestyramine much anymore. I do, and when I do it, I also do it very gently. I never do it 4 times a day. It's like, number one, it's almost impossible to do anything 4 times a day on an empty stomach. It's a huge dose. People aren't going to comply anyway. So when I do have them do it, it's probably twice a day. And definitely the natural stuff. You don't want NutraSweet in there or sugar, so you just have it compounded. Not natural, but compounded. Sauna, love sauna for detox. Glutathione, of course, a superstar. I use a lot of phospholipid therapy intravenously and orally. And the binders. So I don't know where I got this from. I probably stole it from somebody. But this is showing which toxins bind to which substances, which clays, etc. I don't know how accurate it is either. I don't know. I couldn't find anything. No one has this. I think Neil has something a lot similar to this, but I don't know where the data comes from. I wish I knew which one's exactly bound to which toxins, better than others. Which one I do? The different methods. I don't remember what that one was. Oh, yeah, here we go. So this is one that actually did show what to do. So different methods to counteract mycotoxin production. So this is in animals. Presumably it works the same in us. So these are the aluminosilicates, zeolites, organic ones. Turns out a really good one is yeast cell wall extract. I'm still trying to find a good one. Now that could be, I'm not sure if that's just like beta-glucan or if it has to be a specific. A lot of these companies that show like Ultrabond, they're using yeast cell wall extracts that are really good binders. So if anybody knows of a really good available one, I'd love to know it. I've been using beta-glucan. I don't know if that works. Glucomanins. Saccharomyces, of course, is a yeast probiotic. And they're actually using bacteria to get rid of mold toxins. Again, these are proprietary ones that they've patented, some of these. So this is, again, something you can look up later. So this U-bacterium, BBSH797 strain, produces enzymes that degrade trichothecenes. Would love to have some of that. So Lactobacillus rhamnosus specifically, it looks like it might be a good one to detox DON, which is in the food, T2. So that Lactobacillus rhamnosus is available. It's in many probiotics. You might want to focus on one of those at high dose. Cholestyramine can bind ochratoxin, ZON, and FB1. Charcoal. So this is, again, some more data driven on which ones bind to what. So this, again, more on which particular binders work for which toxins. Charcoal looks like it's good for zearalenone. So activated charcoal for zearalenone. That's the one that's the endocrine disruptor. So significant reduction of intestinal absorption of zearalenone was found after inclusion of activated carbon, activated charcoal, or cholestyramine, and even at the lowest doses, the charcoal was better. Saccharomyces can reduce aflatoxin. So I try to do things as naturally as possible, whatever I'm treating, whether it's pandas or Lyme or mold. So I try to do natural products as much as possible. These are the ones that look like they can be helpful. So dried yeast of sugar cane is the highest removal capacity for aflatoxin. I don't know where to get that. Average reduction of 98%. So autolyzed yeast, even brewer's yeast, looks like it works. So autolyzed yeast presented extensive removal capacity, up to 93%. The yeast cell wall on this one showed the lowest removal capacity. This is aflatoxin. So sugarcane extract. You all know about the ERMI test. ERMIs. So this is the two labs. I won't get into this today, but right now there's two labs we all know about that do this testing. I think combining them is a good idea. Right now, Great Plains does check zearalenone. This lab tests more. It looks like it's testing less, right? There's only 4. But if you look under the trichothecenes here, it's checking a lot more of them. So right now, Great Plains only checks Roridan E, but there's several more, right? So my big problem with the mass spec stuff right now is that it's just a little snapshot. You're missing a whole bunch of stuff, right? So you could have either one of these tests be totally negative and be loaded with toxins because they didn't check for that one. That's the problem. Right now, this is the best as far as covering all the bases. So if you have a lot of Roridan A, but you're only checking Roridan E, you're missing it. So this is the other lab, Great Plains, checking aflatoxin. They do check zearalenone, STG, only Roridan E. So they're really deficient on the trichothecenes, which is the biggest problem. So as of last night's lecture as well, this is not a sterile world. People freak out about this stuff. And bacterial hand washing, I'm like, no, don't do that, right? It's keeping yourself healthy, your immune system healthy. I always battle with my wife with this because she's doing the scrubbing and washing her hands and telling the kids not to go outside, and mostly because she doesn't want to get hit by a car because we live on a corner, which sucks. But yeah, same thing. I don't know anyone's kids that are outside as much as we used to be when we were growing up. So we really need to connect again with the outside world. So it's just be smart, relax. Do try to avoid the obvious toxins. But again, my idea here is to try and get more comprehensive mycotoxin testing so we can really deal with this better. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Filidei.